Hello and a very warm welcome in the first part of the election campaign in the battle for 2019. The attention was squarely focused on the Balakot airstrikes, the terror attack in Pulwama and India's national security. Now, just ahead of the first phase, Rahul Gandhi and the Congress party promising 72,000 rupees a year to the poorest of the poor. Can the minimum income guarantee scheme be implemented without taking the country to economic ruin? Joining us on the India Today Economists Roundtable to discuss this threadbare over the next 1 hour, I want to introduce first P.N. Vijay, spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Flanking him, Nirmala Soundarajan, Head of Research and Senior Fellow at the Pehle India Foundation. With us also on this broadcast is Sanjeev Ahluwalia. He's an advisor at the Observer Research Foundation. Author, columnist Mihir Sharma flanks him. To my left, I have Salman Soz, spokesperson of the Congress party. I hope you're carrying 3.6 lakh crore rupees in your pocket, because we're going to be asking that question again and again. Paisa kahan se aayega? Flanking him is Rajiv Dubey, managing editor for Business Today. And also to his left is Arun Kumar, well-known economist. With us from outside the India Today Mediaplex at this time, well-known economist Mohan Guruswamy, an agricultural scientist. At this time, we're joined by Devinder Sharma from Chandigarh. So welcome to all our guests. I want to go across first to Salman Soz and understand from him, how is it that without cutting any existing subsidies, without taking the country to economic ruin, you will produce the 3.6 lakh crore rupees, which is about 2% of our GDP, which is required to fund NYAY?
I think, the most important question as far as we are concerned is how can we let the poorest people, those without
No, this
any
is not
voice.
an election
No,
speech.
this is not about this.
We're at an economist roundtable.
I
The question that we've asked at the outset is, where will you find the money from?
But we need to frame the debate before you get to the money part. And the critical thing is that we have very poor people in the country. India is at a stage, our economy is big enough to now help the poorest in this country to have a dignified life. That's a starting point. That is what we have to go with.
Where will you find the money from?
This is exactly the kind of question that we got when we proposed Manrega. And what happened because of Manrega? According to NCAER, India reduced its poverty by 34% between 2004 and 2012. This particular scheme, where we are promising to give 72,000 rupees per year per family for 5 crore families, there are a couple of things that are going to happen. One, this scheme is going to be launched in phases.
No, I'm not asking. This is not a manifesto program. I'm saying 3.6 lakh crore rupees is the ask.
3.6 lakh crore.
Where are you going to find the money from? You've also said you won't cut back on subsidies.
No. We have said that we are not going to cut back on the.
So which subsidies are you willing to cut back on?
No, wait a second. There are some
Which subsidies are you willing to cut back on?
Beyond the core subsidies like midday meal schemes and we have some kerosene and all the stuff. There's plenty of stuff on the table. And by the way,
No, what is the stuff on the table? One second. Let's be specific. Which subsidies are you willing to cut back on, Mr. Soz?
There are only two ways you can balance your budget, right? You can either increase your revenue or you can cut your expenditure. On the expenditure side, I think there's plenty. I mean, every year.
You're not answering my question.
But
don't give us rhetoric. Give us. This is an economist roundtable. All of them want to know from you.
No, I'm sorry.
If you're saying there are non-core subsidies, which are the subsidies the Congress party is prepared to cut back on?
I'm sorry. I'm just giving you a very reasoned argument. Did Narendra Modi tell you where he's going to get 15 lakh rupees for every bank account?
That's not the answer to the question.
I'm just trying to answer the question.
What are non-core subsidies? What, according to the Congress party, are non-core subsidies?
There's non-core spending that we should not be perhaps
like
doing.
What?
Like you have revenue foregone on for so many corporations. We're giving incentives, and what are we getting back? Or NPS, 3,50,000 crores of NPAs were written off between 2014 and 2018, out of which only 50,000 crores have been repaid.
NPA doesn't come from the government's balance sheet. First of all, let me, Mr. Soz, one sec.
Let Rajiv come in.
Rahul, just one sec. It is almost delusional, to my view, of the Congress to think a scheme of the scale of 6 times of Manrega can be funded out of nothing. It is almost impossible. It's 6 times and more of Manrega. The other important thing is that if you think that you have the leeway in the coming year, you don't. 11.5% escalation on current subsidies is already accounted for in the next budget. You're not going to get that. The second important thing is that almost 3/4, probably more, of every rupee the government of India is going to earn tomorrow is already accounted for today in terms of where it's going to be spent. You do not have that.
You need to try harder. You
have to figure out new ways to tax. So please tell us, where will you tax the people?
First of all, on the taxes part, let's get to the revenue side. On the revenue side, there'll be no new taxes for the middle class. In fact, the middle class has been suffering from a lot of tax terrorism. There'll be no new taxes for the middle class. Okay? Fine? Revenue foregone, we will look into that very, very seriously.
How much do you hope to be able to generate through revenue foregone? Once again, how much resource mobilization do you hope to do through revenue foregone? How much money will you get?
There are right now, I think there's about 80,000 crores just on the corporate side, right?
You need to get to 3.6 lakh crores, even if I assume what you're saying is correct.
You look at 3.6 lakh crores, there are so many ways.
What are the ways?
I'll tell you. When you put this money in the hands of people, 3.6 lakh crores, poor families, what will they do with it? They'll spend it. They will not save it, they'll spend it. That is going to give rise to economic activity. That is going to be the kind of stuff that will actually help
one second. Everyone here studied more economics than I did. But what we're understanding is we're not cutting subsidies in a big way. We're not raising taxation. Yet somehow we'll raise 3.6 lakh crore rupees. This even to me sounds like voodoo economics. Let's hear from some economists. I'll start with Mayor Sharma. Does this make sense? We won't cut back on subsidies. We won't raise taxes.
Won't cut back on core
we'll
subsidies.
Somehow find 3.6 lakh crore rupees. Mayor.
Well, I think that unless we know how this is going to add up, it's going to be very difficult to believe that it could possibly be implemented. Definitely, I've looked at the explanation that the Congress has given in general for how this will all work out in the end. If it works out, it will work out in the medium to long term. I don't see how in the next few years you can possibly afford this. Sure, maybe there'll be, as Salman is saying, maybe there'll be an increase in spending and that will lead to an increase in output, but that's in the future. I don't see how the next year, year after that, 3 years from now, this is not going to send the fiscal deficit up 5-6%.
They're saying they won't cut back on core subsidies, they won't increase taxes, yet they'll somehow at the outset produce 3.6 lakh.
We won't increase middle class taxes.
Let me look at the numbers in perspective. I'd be the happiest person if the heavens opened up and Kubeira came and gave everybody 72,000 rupees. Why 6,000? 60,000 also I'll ask. But that not being the case, we have to do the numbers, we have to do the maths. We have 3 core subsidies in this country: food, petroleum and fertilizer. All these 3, as per the revised estimates of 18-19, worked out about 72 to 75,000 crores. Now we are shooting at 3.6 lakh crores. I don't think the Congress is serious about throwing away subsidies for gas for the poorer sections, kerosene, about fertilizer subsidy for the marginal farmer, about the ration thing. So I don't think the Congress, unless they are Congress has this habit of shooting and scooting, you see. When you got 45 seats, you can afford to do that. But to be taken seriously, and I take the Congress party very seriously, but because let's not forget, they brought in the new economy into this country, Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh. We are still grateful to them. Congress is a great party. So when Congress says something, we take it very seriously. So I don't think any practical politician will try to remove subsidies in this country. Then taxation, our experience with GST is every time we have the GST council meeting, the Congress ministers, the Congress chief ministers, others shoot for lower GSTs. So I don't think there is much opportunity for us to increase indirect taxes. Direct taxes, we are trying to do something. Salman himself said that there's not much scope for increasing indirect taxes.
No, but he leaves that veiled threat only for the middle class, which means if you are rich, God help you, the Congress party is coming for you. Who do you think is rich? What according to you is the middle class?
By the way,
we know about the strong relationship with the Congress party. Right from Mrs. Indira Gandhi with businessmen. We don't want to talk about it.
I will just say this.
There is history recorded.
Look at the effective tax rates for corporations and see who's paying the highest effective tax rate in this country. Companies that are earning between 0 to 1 CR, their profits before taxes, they're paying the most. And companies that are the wealthiest, they're paying the least effective tax rates. I'm sorry, that cannot continue.
I want to ask you one thing.
I'm just saying
you brought in the subsidy scheme for Uttarakhand, Himachal and the northeastern states and Jammu and Kashmir. And that was the biggest What you said was people don't have to pay income tax, people don't have to pay
people in Jain pay
excise duty,
and
all the multinationals. I'm talking about the big corporations whom you feel BJP has been favoring. All the multinationals, and I'm in the corporate world, take it from me, the Hindustan Lever, the Britannia, the Colgates, all of them shifted to those no tax areas. You did that. So now, tell me specifically, all this grandiose statement is fine, I'll take money from the corporate tax, from the corporates. Where will you take it? You have to go into detail, because if you said 30,000 crores, it's fine. You're talking about 3.6 lakh crores.
Okay, let's hear from the other guests also. Sanjeev Ahluwalia, is this voodoo economics? Because Chidambaram says, we've consulted 12 economists, we've got this covered, we've got this sorted.
Yeah, I mean, they've consulted foreign economists, mostly.
No.
Not Indian economists.
No, we've consulted Indian economists.
But what you said, what Mr. Gandhi said was that we've consulted the international community, which is fair enough. No, but I think there is a way. There is a way in which the election promise, if it finally does become an election promise, can be met. But it will be met at the expense of public investment, right? And at the expense of a lower transfer via the centrally sponsored schemes to the states. There is play over there, but that has its own consequences. Whether or not this consumption push will be able to counter the withdrawal of public investment, as Mr. Gadkari has been, utilizing, and whether or not the states, how they will respond to a reduction in the centrally sponsored schemes, which are particularly relevant in health and education and social sectors. That is an open issue.
Okay, Arun Kumar, the Congress says Modi demonetized the economy, we will remonetize the economy. The infusion of funds in the hands of the poorest by itself will set off a chain of events that will ensure that achhe din are here. We'll find the money.
So, my argument is that it's the unorganized sector which got damaged very badly, both by demonetization and GST, and therefore the demand at the unorganized sector level has declined. Now we need to take care of the poor. So where do we get the funds from? That's the real question, So A, we need to take care because they're suffering.
So you support the idea of a minimum income guarantee program? You believe it's financially doable without ruining our economy?
Yes. So how do we raise the resources? We don't need to cut the subsidies, but we need to raise the wealth taxation, because it's wealth taxation, estate duty and the gift tax, which has been completely eliminated in the last 15 years. And your data suggests from the World Inequality Report that 1% Indians have 70% of the wealth, okay? And if you include the black wealth, it becomes 1% have 85% of the wealth. So if you were to tax even 0.5%, and that tax, wealth tax of 0.5% on 5% of the population having a wealth of above 50 lakhs, you'd be able to raise about 2.5 lakhs crores.
So this is coming down to the Gini coefficient, the disparity between the poorer and the rich, and how much of an inequality there is. Let me ask Sanjeev Ahluwalia, tax the rich, give to the poor. Rahul Gandhi wants to play Robin Hood now.
Rahul, look, I mean, Modi ji tried to do that, right? He was very transparent. He brought in the GST. He went in for demonetization. Both were aimed at ending corruption, which is essentially what Arun is trying to aim at.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
So that is one aspect of it.
If you want to use wealth taxation, gift tax and estate duty, these three together will get you 2.5 lakh crores of rupees, If you get only 0.5% tax, according to my calculations which I have done, we will be able to get that.
So many ways of evading
He says there are so many ways of evading wealth tax.
No, but the point is, therefore, there are mechanisms. In 93-94 in the alternate budget, we suggested how it can be done by what is called site and services valuation of property. Site and services valuation is what will get you the value of the property without having to go into the details of the property,
Mohan Guruswamy, do you believe that NYAY can be implemented without sending the fiscal deficit on a spiral? We saw the last time, we saw the fiscal deficit go up to about 5.7% was under Pranab Mukherjee as finance minister soon after the economic meltdown, and we saw how inflation spiraled after that. Do you believe the Congress has done its numbers properly when it says we can do this without ruining the economy?
I don't know if the Congress has done its numbers. I don't think so. But I think it can be done. And I think the money can be found for this. It's only 1.6% of GDP. And like Arun suggested, if you put a 2% surcharge on wealth tax and inheritance taxes, you will get this kind of money. So, it's just a question of will. And I think some of the existing subsidies which are unmerited have to be have to be looked at again very carefully. Now, for instance, there are subsidies on sugar, milk, and all kinds of things, which go to the urban middle class. I think you need to look at this. Even when a country can spend 11.4% of its GDP on paying government employees, surely it's not difficult to find 1.4 or 1.5% of GDP for the poorest 20%. And when you add, you're not going to add 12,000 rupees per month to every family. Please listen to me. 6,000 rupees per month to every family. It's topping up from what I can see. They guarantee a minimum amount of that much. So, so the actual expenditure will be far less. And if you look at the GDP growth and the trends and tax collection rate and all by 2022, about which time they will be ready with the scheme, the money will start coming in. There will be money there. Taxes foregone. So said there was 80,000 crores, but last year actually direct taxes and commercial taxes and excise duties foregone were 3.48 lakh crores. You can look at that again.
Nirupama Soundarajan, there are economists who seem to be suggesting
public sector
that
industries
tax
make losses.
the rich,
everybody is making losses.
You will find ways of rewarding the poor. In election season, politically and as far as votes are concerned, that's a compelling argument.
And it is, but let me also say two things, and I agree with Sanjeev here. See, first, there used to be wealth tax in this country, and even when there was wealth tax, you saw revenue deficit actually growing. So clearly at that point, because the wealth is so porous, it was migrating somewhere else, it remained hidden. Those are problems that you are going to continue to have to grapple with today.
What is the highest wealth tax we ever collected?
We used to have it. We recently got rid of it. So I don't know whether reintroducing it is going to get us the entire revenue. Second, just to give you some numbers, Rahul, since we're talking subsidies, if you need to allocate money, the way as this one said it correctly, you either have to increase your revenue. That's not going to happen in this country currently unless you really put a wealth tax or you're going to add that. But even then, I don't think you're going to get as much because your tax base in itself is quite low, first point. Or you need to reallocate. On reallocating, let me just give you some subsidy numbers based on budget documents. The core subsidy, so you have your core of core schemes, you have core schemes, and then you have all the rest of your centrally sponsored schemes. The total that you spend on all of that as of 1920 budgeted estimates is about 13 lakh crores. So you have money there. You can rearrange that and create the money. But ask ourselves this, that what are we willing to do away with? Because also keep in mind that every scheme that's been introduced has been introduced keeping in mind a certain vote bank or a certain kind of people for a certain reason. So if you're going to take that away from them, can you guarantee that they will be compensated in another manner, notwithstanding whether they need to be compensated or not?
But let's see what's been happening directionally. We've been saying that India is not being a tax-compliant economy, therefore let's moderate taxes, both corporate and private taxes, so that more and more people come into the tax net. That will improve the tax to GDP ratio, make India a healthier, more structured, more formal economy. That's the direction we've been on generally, even during the UPA years, taken forward during the NDA years. Now you impose a wealth tax and completely reverse that cycle. Salman Soos, that doesn't make sense.
Well, first of all, when you talk about taxation, indirect taxes are actually on the rise in this country. Indirect taxes basically they impose a disproportionate burden on poor people in this country. Sure. I'm sorry, we have to reverse that trajectory. We need more direct taxes as a ratio of overall taxes. That's one. Second, if you have to do something like GST, very good, but please keep it simple. Our institutional capacity to implement such taxes is very limited. So you're creating a monster instead of simplifying the tax. The Congress Party, just a second, the Congress Party has promised and will, in its manifesto, which will be released next week, drastically simplify GST and lower the upper whatever the maximum tax rate is.
But each time we seem to be simplifying GST collections actually come down.
No, wait a second. Wait a second. I think if you want a more tax compliant nation, please do not start having indirect taxes at 28%, 41% and all that. That's not going to work. That's what international research shows. I don't know where they came up with this structure. What the World Bank calls the most complex or the second most complex indirect tax structure in the world. Let us not have that. Let us please cut our people some slack. And by the way, when people say Indians don't pay enough taxes, we're a poor country.
No.
You will not have that.
I'm sorry. Rahul, I'm sorry.
Don't have enough.
He's saying 28% indirect taxes
in the world.
And he's going to cut
our
it.
tax GDP ratio is also one of the worst in the world.
Taxes.
So
and
the
he's saying
capacity
he's
to pay
going
more
to
taxes
increase
is
direct
there.
taxes. Will the Congress manifesto, which will be released next week, say it will raise direct taxes, it will bring in excise duty, it will bring in wealth duty, it will bring in the gift tax? Please, if you have the honesty, please say it.
I will tell you. By the way, Mr. Vijay, you come from a party where people, they made promises.
Don't talk about my party.
Well,
it's your manifesto.
Well, no.
It's your promise.
I'm sorry. This
Please,
is you're from a political party that promised to take us to the moon and delivered us into a ditch.
But Mr. Vijay, what you say can only be taken with a pinch of salt. Because you promised 15 lakh rupees into people's
account.
account.
Not in our manifesto.
No, but the Prime Minister said it. No, whether it's in your... You're saying... So are you saying that the Prime Minister shouldn't be taken seriously when he's doing campaign speeches?
Rahul, what's now? I think the 15 lakhs has been bandied about enough. He and we have been trying our best to get money from overseas, held by Mr. Rahul Gandhi's friends. Let me put it that way.
Oh, really?
Let me put it that
5 years,
way.
what has he done then? Why hasn't he taken Mr.
Rahul Gandhi's friends are so clever. So clever.
So all of these people are running away with the money?
We said Mr. Gandhi's friends are all residing in various parts of India.
Mr. Vijay, it was on the 7th of November. It was on the 7th of November in 2013 in Kanker in Chhattisgarh, where the Prime Minister promised 15 lakh rupees into people's account. And I can read out exactly what he said. The whole world says that all the crooks in India deposit their monies in banks abroad. Black money is hoarded in banks abroad. My brothers and sisters of Kanker tell me this stolen money should come back or not, this black money should come back or not. Shall we take back every black penny that's hoarded by these crooks? If even once the money hoarded by these crooks in banks comes back, every poor Indian will get between 15 to 20 lakh rupees, just like that.
Saying it again.
That's so much money.
Saying it again and again and again and again. If
this wasn't in your manifesto.
Don't
believe the election speech.
If the friends of Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who reside in various parts of the globe, if they are good enough to
like
bring
Mehul
in...
Choksi?
If they bring
like Leader Modi?
Rahul,
sir, don't hold my hand. I'm not kidding. You're putting me under pressure holding my hand. 1 second. Devinder Sharma is listening in.
We sold... Modi told you the sources also.
Rahul, nobody has
Devinder Sharma, there is...
not telling me the sources.
No matter how much verbal gymnastics Salman Source does, the fact is the Congress so far has come up with no cogent explanation for where they will raise the 3.6 lakh crore rupees from. Most sensible economists believe unless you either raise taxes or cut subsidies, this is just voodoo economics.
Well, first of all, I don't know where the money will come from. Mr. Rahul Gandhi hasn't spelled out the mechanism of delivering this NYAY scheme. But having said that, what disappoints me is that every time some money is to be given to the poor, the question that this country debates is where will the money come from? But when the money has to be given to the corporates, I've never seen the economist ever questioning where will the money come from. I'll just give you one example. In 2009, at the time of the global economic meltdown, India provided an economic stimulus package of 1.86 lakh crore to the corporates. Now, I didn't hear a debate happening at that time, where will the money come from? And to my surprise, that economic stimulus package is still continuing. For 10 years, we have giving an economic stimulus to corporates. Nobody is questioning where will the money come from.
No, but Devinder Sharma, when it comes to rhetoric and just flourish, you get full marks. But if you see what's happened over the last 5 years, you've actually had the insolvency and bankruptcy court.
Sorry, don't say rhetoric.
You've had schemes like you've had RERA put in place, which has actually put the screws on corporate India. You can't compare what was happening in the past with what's happening now. From the likes of Naresh Goyal to the likes of Vijay Mallya, they've been losing control of their business. Therefore, this sounds like, oh, I'm on the side of the poor. It's a great rhetorical argument. It's not matched by reality.
Let me answer that. Let me answer that. You know, there is not rhetoric. Even that 1.86 lakh crore is still continuing. For 10 years, we have been given an economic stimulus package to corporates. This is no justification. Nobody knows, in fact, why are we doing that? Having said that, what about the revenue foregone? It's as Vivek Devaraj had said somewhere that 5% of GDP goes every year on revenue foregone. Now, if that was to be recovered and revenue foregone hasn't done anything worthwhile, it was supposed to help increase in the industrial production, increase manufacturing, increase exports, provide job creation. Where are all those things? So where has this money gone? I think that's a question that economists, sensible economists that you talk about should be discussing. Why is it that every time agriculture or poor farmers have to give money or poorest money have to give
money foregone,
then the question comes up, where will the money come from?
So-called freebies being given to industry. Look, I mean, it's a comprehensive scheme that you're working for them. Everybody knows interest rates in India are horribly high. Surjit Bhalla has been shouting from the housetops that the interest rates are very much higher. They can be cut by 3 percentage points for industry and for everybody else. But we don't do it because of our own institutional issues. So these are ways in which you compensate the investor. If you don't give a good break to the investor, he can invest anywhere in the whole world. We can keep arguing.
No, but Mayor Sharma, we've been struggling over the last 5 years to kickstart private investment. In the midst of all of this, you go and increase corporate taxes even further. That's the surest way of telling corporates who are already spending a lot of their money outside India that's where you should be looking, not inside the country.
I think that's the reason that, look.
And Rahul, are these tax breaks new? Did they start in 2014? Or have they been continuing for the last 20 years?
You are committed for 7-10 years. You can't just break off and say that
I think all this revenue foregone stuff is a red herring. The truth is that if you're going to be giving this much money away, the fiscal deficit is going to go up. And frankly, I feel that the Congress would just stand up and say, yes, it's going to go up, we don't care.
And also,
as far as throwing Modi out of office and coming back to power is concerned, they seriously don't care.
That said, Rahul, the fear normally with the fiscal deficit going up is that it will constrict private investment taking off. The problem is that these guys, under the current government, private investment is not taken off anyway because they've been overspending, they've been over-borrowing. So frankly, either way, there's no argument to be made. The Congress should stand up and say, we'll spend more. And the Modi government should stand up and say, we don't mind spending more also as long as we are not borrowing.
And also to the point that core subsidies will be kept and some subsidies can be subsumed is a myth. Because if you look at the history of India, since 2008, not one government has had the political capital to reduce subsidies. 70,000 crore was the subsidy we were paying in 2008. Next year will be 7 lakh crore if Mr. Salman Sose's party comes to power. 10 times the subsidy burden.
I agree with that.
So who has had the political capital to reduce subsidies that you will?
No,
my argument here is twofold.
The argument should be looked at from the point of revenue. In terms of revenue, India is one of the lowest tax GDP ratio in the world, including developing countries. Our direct tax ratio is one of the lowest at about 6% of GDP, So our capacity to raise, and given the inequality and given the wealth disparity, there is a lot of capacity for the well-off sections, just the top 5% or top even 1%. As the data shows, we can raise.
And I want to go across to Juan Guruswamy because he's outside the studio, but I want to give an equal opportunity, Mr. Guruswamy. At a time when the Congress is not even willing to commit on which are the subsidies they consider non-core and are willing to cut back on, you can't just say, we will do it, believe in us, we've consulted economists, we'll find the money.
Exactly.
There are hard choices to be made. Without explaining what are the hard decisions you will take, how can there be any credibility to the belief that they'll find this 3.6 lakh crore rupees?
I think, people have already said by putting 2% additional tax on the rich, the people who pay declared incomes of, who have wealth of about 2.5 crores, you will recover that kind of money. There are many ways you get this money, but you must first exhibit the will for it. The fact that they didn't do the homework, maybe they don't have the data, is something else. But should it be done? Can it be done? That's what I say, yes, it can be done, it should be done. It's time it should be done. Why did the government put it in its economic survey in 2016-17, saying that it should be given?
I'm going to take a quick break right now. When I come back, there are multiple things that still need to be discussed. One, instead of going in for a single phase big bang implementation, can the implementation be staggered over 5 phases? Therefore, the economy keeps growing at a certain speed, you stagger the implementation bit by bit, you keep your promise, and yet all the hit doesn't come into the budget at the same time in the same year. Is that one way of doing this? Also, the Congress says, we found the money for Manrega. We found the money for the farm loan waiver. Therefore, we will find the money even if these economists don't know where we'll find the money from. Does that argument hold belief? And most importantly, at a time when the BJP is pushing so hard on national security and terrorism, can this idea of Rahul Gandhi playing Santa Claus and depositing 72,000 rupees in the banks of the poorest, can it be a game changer? Can it sink the Modi ship and mar his chances of re-election? So a lot more to talk about with this really sharp panel when we come back on the other side of a very quick break. You're watching the India Today Economists Roundtable. I return on the other side. Stay with us. Right now, the one question that really is in everyone's mind, forget where they find the money from after the elections. Can this promise of Rahul Gandhi playing Santa Claus help the opposition win this election and oust Prime Minister Modi from power? Is that something, PN Vijay, that is now beginning to bother the BJP, that this is generating some traction? You've been focusing on national security. Rahul Gandhi says, I'll get the money, forget where I get the money from. I did Manrega. It's my party that gave you the farm loan waiver. Hum laenge paisa. Kaise bhi laenge?
Frankly, Rahul, not at all. We did, if you ask me a direct question, we did a lot of field studies, and we have identified that there are 3 or 4 issues, according to us, which are going to influence voters. And to our judgment, the first is the quality of leadership, Mr. Modi versus Mr. Rahul Gandhi. Whether people have the confidence that Mr. Modi can lead this country or Mr. Rahul Gandhi can lead this country. The second is a genuine concern about national security. The third is jobs. People are worried about jobs. So these, in our view, are the top 3 we have found in the right order. Now, I will admit.
No, but when you did this survey, Rahul Gandhi hadn't promised that
I will admit that Rahul Gandhi has managed to take a lot of TV space with his pronouncement. When you make something so bombastic, you are bound to, and we are a democracy and we respect that. So people like you are holding a lot of programs to tell the public, is it possible to do it? You are doing your job. Now, I think these things have a time to play out. When you make such a big announcement, people will take it seriously. Your TRPs may go up by 3-4% also. I mean, I don't mind. But I have enough confidence in the Indian electorate that they will see through this, I would say, crazy game of the Congress and get back to real issues. I would again say...
Sharma, cynically speaking, the person to whom this money is hypothetically going to come doesn't care where the economists on this table find the money from. If the money lands up in his bank, he'll be happy.
Yeah.
Can this promise, to what extent can it change the dynamics in this election?
Look, Rahul, this is inevitable. All right, the moment you put into place the plumbing, the architecture that allowed you to have direct transfers, somebody was going to start offering direct transfers. This is predictable the moment that Aadhaar came into play. This is predictable the moment that you started putting people into bank accounts. Somebody was going to start offering direct income transfers. All right. Now, the Congress happened to be the first person. I can guarantee you, I can put it in writing, by 2024, by the next election, the BJP will be also offering direct income transfers, perhaps more than the Congress. All right. This is how politics works in this country, and this is how politics is always
going to work. But you're assuming that they'll wait till the next election.
That's also
because
true.
When the farm loan waiver promise was made in Uttar Pradesh, within a few weeks after initially opposing it, the BJP also made that promise. So could that happen? That's something we look at separately. Rajiv Dubey, your sense of whether this can change the dynamics at play in this election?
No, it's a phenomenal narrative to take to the population. It's a phenomenal, because in the rural belt, especially the poor, it's more important for them to understand how much money will eventually come into my bank account, and if they have actually been getting the 2,000 rupees every quarter, then they are assured that 72,000 rupees a year can also come into their bank account, and so they are more likely to be inclined to go with a narrative like that.
My take would be that, look, this is election season, everybody is promising. Even in the interim budget, 75,000 crores was promised, plus, unorganized sector, etc. So everybody is going to do that, The real question is, globally also, We are talking about a universal basic income. You know, Finland is implementing it.
So have you seen Finland and the size of Finland and the complexity of rolling out a scheme like this in Finland vis-a-vis India?
Everybody's talking about it, and you had Warren Buffett say 6 years back that I am paying less tax as a percentage than my secretary, so rich should pay more taxes. You know,
but that's not the case in India.
No, this is a global thing, you know, because everywhere you find that the disparities have increased, demand has fallen, and that's why it's happening. So in a sense, in India also, because the disparities have increased, demand has fallen, and that's why capacity utilization has fallen.
Are you concerned that this could put us on a populist spiral? To be fair to the Modi government, financially they've been reasonably prudent. They haven't been as reckless and irresponsible as some governments we've seen in the past. Could this push the BJP also towards coming up with such grandiose promises?
No, you can rest assured that the BJP is not somebody who is just going to take such a strategy lying down. They will be coming out with a counter strategy, and it will be as explosive.
Congress ka NYAY, BJP ka NYAY, there will be something
counter offer.
But you know what I want to say is, what I just wanted to add.
No, 1 second. This is a real concern. Let's not take this as a joke, because when, for example, the AIADMK promised a TV, I remember the DMK made a promise of a bigger TV. When one party in Tamil Nadu promised a certain kind of sari, the opposition party promised a fancier kind of sari. So this is a real problem in populist elections.
And there is gunjaish, as they say in the budget, as was pointed out just now by Nirupama, that there is a lot of gunjaish in the budget, but you have to take a decision. Are you going to rely on public investment? Who's bothered about public investment? It's only the guys who make money out of public investment.
No, everybody benefits from it. When there are new roads built, you can get to Meerut in 40 minutes.
I want to say one thing.
Mr. Vijay, just a moment. The simple fact is that maybe in the 2000s, you could have gone to the voters and said, guys, look, if you are fiscally restrained, if you invest in growth, if you invest in public spending, everything is going to improve, things are going to improve for everyone. But the fact is, for the past 7 to 9 years, you've had all this good behavior, you've had a reduction in the fiscal deficit, and you've had public investment.
No jobs.
No jobs. How are you going to convince voters
can this help
that
the
this is good
opposition
for them?
do better in the election than they would have done otherwise?
It's a very simple thing. If we're talking about relaxing your fisc, I'm saying use the same logic that we're using to discuss how you're going to raise your 3.6 lakh crores. I'm saying use the same logic and increase your defense spending. It's half the money to get to your 3%. Why are we not doing
the defense spending?
No, I'm saying use the same logic and raise the money to increase your defense spending from 1.5 to 3%, which has been an equally hot topic of debate. But we haven't used the same one.
I want to say one thing.
No. I'm saying the logic. Let me explain. Your defense spending currently is at 1.5%. Everyone's been screaming for a while saying we spend too little. Increase it to 3%.
Including the Congress party.
Yes. Now, 1.5% to 3% is about 1.6 lakh crores, which is about half of what you need to raise for this. If you wanted to, you could do the same things. You can tax the rich. You can actually let your fisc go. You can do all of that, and you could have raised the money. But we haven't done that. And every time this debate came, exactly, every time we debated, someone said not a good idea.
Like I said, just one moment. Like I said, what you will earn tomorrow, you are already pre-committed into spending. In terms of interest you will pay on the 90 lakh crore of debt you have, in terms of salaries of employees of the government.
These are committed.
No, that's what I'm saying. So you do not have
because we've got guests outside the studio also. Devinder Sharma, can this idea help the opposition do much better than it would have done without the promise of a minimum income guarantee?
Well, Rahul, I think we need to understand that according to the Economic Survey 2016, the per family income in 17 states of India, which is half the country, is 20,000 rupees a year, which means less than 1,700 rupees a month. I don't even know how these people survive in 1,700 rupees a month. But this is the reality which Economic Survey 2016 had projected. I think these are the people who are desperately looking for some hand-holding. And if anything that comes into account, obviously, they would be keenly looking forward to it. The ruling party started with PM Kisan. I have always been a supporter of PM Kisan also. And my argument is, yes, PM Kisan, although the amount is small, but of course, I'm sure it will grow at some stage. But that was a good shift from price policy to income policy. Today we need to provide income into the hands of the poor, and I am sure the ruling party had started first, and the opposition has taken it on, and this is the way forward. We have to now provide direct income support.
Okay.
The
Salman,
world is discussing
so
living
your
income, and I
opponents will
believe this is
say
the way forward.
it's Modi who's been dominating the narrative all the way. The Congress is on the mat, against the ropes. They're staring at imminent defeat. Therefore, they're making extravagant promises in the hope that they can rob the bank to pay the poor.
I mean, just look at Mr. Modi's rally yesterday with empty chairs in Meerut, and you'll get a sense of where things are right now. But let me just say one thing. Let's get this back to economics.
Are you saying Rahul Gandhi's rallies are getting bigger crowds than Modi's rallies? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just telling you what Modi's rallies are looking like right now. Look at what he's
Rahul
talking
Gandhi's
about.
rally looking bigger?
He's getting into Shara. I think he's on the way down right now. So wait a second. On the economics of it, I just want us to take a step back a bit, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about the following. 2016, the Asian Development Bank does a social protection indicators report. It ranks 35 countries, Asian countries, and says who's spending what on social protection. India is ranked 24th out of 35 countries. Even countries like Nepal and Pakistan are about. We're not spending enough. Then, you had 2 failed monsoons in this country. When Mr. Modi takes over, not his fault, I agree.
Thank God.
But then they follow a contractionary MSP policy, then they do demonetization, then they do GST. Who is disproportionately hurt by these policies? These poor people. We need to help these people because it is not their fault.
Nobody's
that they
questioning
suffer.
that.
Wait.
Nobody's questioning that we have to. Income distribution, nobody's questioning.
Let me now say.
No, but you're making an election speech in an Economists Roundtable.
Nobody's questioning the fact that you have to do something for the 29% of our population. But the question is, where do you get the money from?
Yes, I'm just saying that we just discussed around this table, and we just discussed that there are revenue opportunities and there are expenditure cut opportunities. Everything is on the table, except there will be no middle class tax increase.
You know, Rahul,
Expenditure cut is exactly
he
what
knows
we
that
talk
the
about.
Ambanis and the Adanis of the world are not voting for him in any case. He says,
Why should the Adanis vote for us? Yesterday there was a relaxation of norms for Adani, 6 out of 6 ventures.
Rahul,
Come
I
on.
want to say one thing.
Yesterday we don't want Mr. Adani's vote. He can be with Mr. Modi.
Salman
Mr. Modi,
एक
Mr.
minute
Modi
allow
and Adani,
others
they
to
can
talk.
form the
Salman,
partnership.
allow. Yesterday in a speech by Rahul Gandhi, he said all this angel taxes, everything, मैं निकाल दूंगा. The biggest tax breaks in India to the corporate sector, which Mr. Salman has suddenly taken a dislike. Salman Soos has taken, who have been the best friends of the Congress party and the Nehru family for a long time. Now, the biggest tax incentives are coming for startups and for foreign direct investment. That's the fact.
which is not a bad thing.
Which is not a bad thing, which is creating jobs. And Mr. Rahul Gandhi himself has said, I don't want to touch that. I'm against angel taxation. So what his spokesperson are saying is against what he is himself saying.
No, actually,
are you going to tax Flipkart?
Are you not understood what he said?
Which are really giving the jobs. The only jobs are coming from the startups.
Mr. Vijay, then you have not understood what he said, because Mr. Gandhi's micro, small and medium enterprise proposal is going to transform this country.
He makes so many proposals every day. We don't know what will transform.
The regulatory forbearance in that proposal is going to dramatically transform this country.
He is going to tax startups.
I think that
And startups
that's how you create jobs, by the way.
the issue is not fiscal
Startups are the ones
deficit
that
or
are getting the biggest
resources. The real
incentives
issue
in
is
this country.
identification. How do you identify these 5 crore people? That's the first point. Second is that the amount of money that's been pitched is very high, is much higher than the poverty line. So you'll have many more than 20%. So therefore, it will not be 3.6 lakh crore, it will probably be twice 3.6 lakh crore. But I think, as Chidambaram has already said, we'll go by stages.
Yes.
We'll not implement it immediately. We'll do a pilot scheme, and then after the pilot scheme, implement it over 4 years. And in the meanwhile, the GDP will grow. Therefore, we'll be managing it. So I think the proposal has to be looked at as Chidambaram has presented it, whether that's a feasible proposal or not. And the numbers have to be looked at very carefully. How do you identify, and how many people will you give it to? That's the important thing.
I know on good authority that the government is finding it difficult to identify the 1 crore farmers in a state like Uttar Pradesh who had to be given this Kisan direct transfer. They're having serious trouble trying to identify the farmers, and therefore the possibility of leakage, even though you've got the JAM trilogy at play, the possibility of leakage is immense. There's a lot of money going down the drain.
Not just that, a lot of the income may actually move to your informal sector because everyone who would want to actually be part of this. So people who are borderline on 12, I don't know if it would happen, but the chances that people who are borderline on the 12,000 a month limit, they start under-reporting as well.
I'm sorry,
And also remember that this data that we are going to be relying on is almost a decade old. SECC 11 is almost a decade old. So where will you be? So you'll have to. Nobody has the data. If you had the data, we would have been able to do it.
Whatever data we have, Modi government doesn't want it to come out. Come on. I mean, let's face it.
Final words very quickly, gentlemen.
Just one more point I wanted to add, and this is mostly so that Salman can take it back to Congress headquarters. That if you're really concerned about the poor, this magical number of 20% has come up from somewhere.
Tendulkar Committee report.
Yeah, but if you look at the latest 2018 UNDP, multi-dimensional index of poverty,
Much less.
what it clearly says is 47% of India is either poor or is vulnerable to poverty, and they cannot be distinguished. I am poor today, I just go above the line, day after, I have a economic shock, I lose a job, I come back as being poor. So if you have to do something, please do something for the full 47%, not for 20, because how will you ever identify 20?
So instead of 3.6 lakh crore rupees,
what is it?
Why
The simple fact here is...
No, I mean, if it's a political thing, then the magnitude is much bigger.
What Sanjeev is saying is correct. The basic fact here is that the reason this has seized hold of the narrative, and it's not going to let go, I think, for much of this election, is because it is an obvious solution to many of the problems. It is an obvious promise for politicians to make, and now it's up to the rest of us to figure out how it's going to be affordable.
No, I'm sorry. I don't agree with that.
Tragedy is.
It's the job
The
of
tragedy
the
is
person
2 years from now,
who
Rahul,
says
we
he
are
will
going to
play
be saying
Santa
this.
Claus, to whom the question must be asked, Santa Claus, where will you get the gifts from? You can't say, we won't increase taxes, we won't cut subsidies, and yet somehow magically we'll find the 3.6 lakh crore rupees. That just doesn't add up. Salman Soz and the Congress need to come up with more convincing answers about where they'll find the money from. That said, that this is a politically potent idea, and that the poor don't particularly care where Salman finds the money from as long as he gives the money to them, is also true. The BJP needs to come up with an alternative. Will it come up with MIG Namo? We don't know. As of now, the government is convinced there is no need for that. But the farm loan waiver promise that was made by Rahul Gandhi was very quickly copied. Could we be heading towards a populism spiral? We are in election season, and as far as elections are concerned, economics is always in silly season in the middle of an election campaign. I want to thank all the guests who joined us for this Economists Roundtable. Thank you very much. Some very, very sharp insights. I'm not sure we have the answers, but I'm not certain that the Congress does either.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you will love to.